of anything they have to offer me, right? It's like, get over yourself, Mark. You gotta.
I believe if we could be indivisible, we would be indestructible. And
Hi, after this, I don't mean to ask you to put you on the spot to say, tell us what's going to happen in the future, but tell us what's going to happen in the future.
Good.
Hello, welcome to Keep Leading Live. Keep Leading Live and the Keep Leading podcast are dedicated to leadership development and insights. I'm your host, Eddie Turner, the Leadership Accelerator. I work with leaders to accelerate performance and drive impact through the power of executive coaching, masterful facilitation, and professional keynote speeches. My goal is to help you stay inspired, stay motivated, so you can keep leading. Today, we're broadcasting on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. If you are joining us on one of these channels, please let us know you're here by commenting in the comment section. You can ask a question. And if you're not already following my guest today, I'm going to encourage you to follow my guest. You're going to want to stay connected with my guest today, and you're going to find out why in just a moment. DDI just released a report, their leadership report of the leadership landscape, and it's the longest one of its type that's been running for the last 11 years. And in it, they revealed what is impacting leaders today unlike ever before. And what it shows is there are a lot of vulnerabilities, and there's some apprehension among leaders about what they need to do to lead more effectively in the world of work. Never before have you seen perhaps where it's no longer, hey, we're going to eliminate the low performers. Now we're actually eliminating top performers who are doing well. Why? AI. There's just certain things you don't need managed anymore if it can be automated. So there's a lot of uncertainty. How can we as leaders deal with it? How can you and I learn how to lead in the new world of work? To answer that question and to explain it, I have the expert for us today. My expert guest today is Dina Smith. And she has written a new book entitled Emotionally Charged: How to Lead in the New World of Work, where she's going to provide us the answers. Dina, welcome to Keep Leading Live.
Hey, Eddie. It's good to be here.
It is so good to be with you. I'm excited to have you. It's been a while since we saw each other. The last time we saw each other, we were with great friends in London.
We were.
Image. For those who might hear the podcast later versus seeing it live, us with our great friends in London at the Thinkers 50 celebration.
Oh, so fun you pulled that photo up. Yeah, there we are, huh?
Yes. It's a great memory that makes me smile. So I wanted to share that. It's so good to have you back and to be together for this conversation. I told people that you are the author of a new book that's on Oxford University Press. I did not tell people, however, that you are an author, prolific author with HBR, Fast Company, and Forbes. And in fact, I just shared your new article that got released yesterday. A fantastic article that you released. So tell us a little bit more about you that I may have left out that our audience needs to know.
Well, gosh, like you, an executive coach based in a different geography. I'm out here in the Bay Area of California. And then, of course, we're so much more than our professional roles, right? So I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I try to be a great friend, I'm a foodie, an equestrian, an optimist, and love socializing.
All right. Well, we know that you excel at all of the above. And today you're going to help us understand just why we need to adjust, what we can do to adjust to be able to lead in the new world of work. And so I'm going to actually share that with our folks who are watching, so they'll be able to see this book, so that they know what they will need to look for on the Amazon bookshelves out there. Tell us, what made you write Emotionally Charged?
Yeah, well, so as an executive coach, I really have the honor and the privilege of being on the front lines with senior leaders every day of every week. And what I noticed, especially over the course of the pandemic, was the extent to which the workplace has changed. So I was a leader in sort of before I became an executive coach. And the striking difference in terms of the emotional demands on leaders was just super apparent. So I stepped back from that and I thought about, like, well, what exactly is happening here? And there were sort of four major shifts that have amounted in these exceptional emotional demands on leaders. So first, we do so much more work through virtual technologies. There's the rise of AI, as you've already mentioned. There's so much fear and sort of rapid obsolescence in the
Mhm.
workplace. We have heightened employee expectations for supportive leaders and mentally healthy workplaces. And then we have an increasingly diverse and polarized workforce. Well, managing sort of within and across these new trends has dramatically increased the emotional demands on leaders, right? It's harder to build trust. And motivate people from a distance, for example. There's more conflict in a more diverse and polarized workforce. Yet there is a clear expectation that you support your employees with personal struggles, but you're still there to drive results. So the real problem is that leaders to this point have not been equipped with sort of the skills and the resources to be successful against these emotional demands. And so what my co-author, Alicia Grandi, and I did was write a book to solve for this gap. And so Emotionally Charged is really chock full of science backed, proven, practical strategies for navigating these new emotional complexities that leaders are dealing with day in and day out.
And that phrase gives some leaders an uncomfortable feeling when they we just say the word emotions.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true, and it's a real shame. There are so many myths and misconceptions that are so sticky.
Mhm,
Despite just decades of evidence about like the value of emotions in
mhm.
navigating our careers and improving relations and improving our performance, in leading more effectively and being more inspiring. Like the evidence is so complete. But there's just a bunch of myths and misconceptions that have stuck around in the workplace that have led to people sort of ignoring, suppressing, and devaluing emotions. And meanwhile, anytime you have a human in the room, you are going to have emotions, right? And thinking's great for logic, but emotions are what lead to action. And so to ignore them at work is really to your peril.
Thank you. Yes, many leaders feel like, especially from a certain time period, that I don't have time for emotions. I need people that'll show up a certain way, and they think what's strong and what's tough, right? But as you
Yeah.
said, anytime you have people, they have emotions, whether you're
Yeah.
forcing them to suppress them or you're allowing them to be nurtured and to use those emotions effectively at their place of employment.
Right.
You make a point.
Both your own emotions, right? And others' emotions. Like leaders are the emotional architects of their organizations. And so they have a super important role, just not only in regulating their own emotions and unpacking and understanding those, but also working with the emotions of other people at work. So it's a very substantial aspect of their role, but it's nowhere on the job description.
Yes, and so we define that as emotional intelligence when we have the understanding of our own emotions and others, and then how to navigate them and successfully use them in that manner.
Mhm.
You make a point in your book that you refer to as the emotional labor. How does that surface in what we're talking about here in balancing emotional intelligence and the effective use of leading
Yeah.
our teams?
Yeah. So emotional intelligence is sort of like this general capacity. And emotional labor is actually the work that we do to display the right emotions at any given moment at work. So all workplaces have these unwritten rules about what emotions are okay, in what amounts, and displayed by whom. Emotional labor is sort of the work we're doing behind the scenes to conform to those unwritten rules. And so for leaders, what this can look like is, rallying their team, even though they're exhausted or they're unsure they even believe in the goal. Right? It looks like code switching across all the different stakeholder groups. How you show up with the board is going to be very different than how you show up with your team versus your peers. So
Mhm.
it's managing that. We have these paradoxical emotional expectations for leaders these days that are truly superhuman. Be confident, but be humble, right? Be sensitive and caring, but drive results. Be composed in the face of challenges, but just enough human, right? Like we are asking for emotional gymnastics. And then leaders face some really weighty decisions where they're affecting other people's lives, layoffs, letting people go because of performance. Doing this requires emotional labor. So leaders actually do this obscene amount of emotional labor in their roles, especially in the new world of work. Um, but hasn't been acknowledged really heretofore. And so it goes sort of untrained. And the real problem with that is um, then the first line of defense, quite naturally, is to hide, ignore, suppress, or fake emotions. Um, that makes perfect sense, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes it's actually the right answer in a given moment, right? but but it largely goes untrained, and so leaders don't necessarily have the skills that they need to manage all of the emotions that they're expected to manage well.
So where can they
And
get these skills?
well, my book, Eddie, that's what this book is filled with. It is filled with the skills that one needs to understand and regulate their own emotions, as well as understand and regulate the emotions of others in the workplace. And there are all of these different tools, and these different tools are fit for use. So there's certain things. I actually just did a short little HBR on it as well. Like, what can you do if you know you're going into an emotionally charged situation? There's specific tools for that
Give us one.
versus
If you go into an
um,
emotionally charged situation, what's one strategy we can employ?
I highly recommend that you employ one of the greatest tools that athletes use, which is visualization. So, what I want you to do if you are going into a meeting where you know the temperature is going to run high, is in your mind, mentally rehearse that situation. Think about how you're going to open the meeting. Think about the meetings of potential, like the moments of potential tension. Think about
Mhm.
how you're going to handle those. Think about the how you want to show up in those moments, and like really like close your eyes and see in your mind's eye that meeting playing out in the way that would be most successful, right?
Excellent. So
And
visualization is one strategy we can use.
mhm,
Is there
absolutely.
uh, is there another strategy that you might want to use if visualization doesn't quite work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not into visualization, Which I honestly recommend you try it. It's been proven to work for professionals, not just athletes too. But um, another thing to really think about in advance is how can I modify this situation that I'm going in to bring down the emotional temperature for both me as well as other participants. So let's say you've got a very difficult decision or really bad news you need to be communicating to your team. um, Think about like strategically ahead of time, the who, the what, the when, the where. Like, how can you set this meeting up in a way where like you're kind of like setting the tone from the beginning?
Mhm.
um like, so instead of defaulting to the conference room next door, maybe you actually want to book a really sort of private space, down the hall or on another floor. Maybe you want to invite your HR partner or your manager to join the meeting, right? Like, think
Well, that's a
about
good strategy. That's another good option for us to consider.
yeah, no, there's so that's the
So you
whole
give us
point of
two
this
good ones
book.
there.
Okay, good,
Good. Thank
good.
you. So, I was trained under Dr. Heifetz at the Harvard Kennedy School. And one of the things that he
Hmm.
talks about, his famous sentences, is about learning to disappoint people at a rate that they can stand. And to
I
do
love
that,
that.
he uses the illustration of a containment of a pot where you allow it to boil to a certain point, boil, boil, boil. And then right before it's about to explode, before it gets out of control, you take the lid off and you allow it to decompress. So when I
Hmm.
saw your opening chapter in your book, From a Simmer to a Boil, How Work and Leadership Have Changed, you had me right there because I immediately thought back to Dr. Heifetz. So tell us about that, going from a simmer to a boil.
Yeah, so the workplace trends that I mentioned a few minutes ago about sort of the rise of virtual technologies to communicate, the rise of AI, these increased employee expectations for supportive leaders and mentally healthy workplaces and an increasingly polarized workforce. Those trends were sort of like simmering in the background, and the pandemic just turned up the gas on all of them. So I think back even to my coaching practice. Before the pandemic, I had a few clients that I would occasionally see on Zoom or Teams or whatever. But a lot of people they weren't even all that fluent in, video teleconferencing. And now everybody, right? It's crazy to me. Like, sometimes you have people in the same building who are actually on video together. Right. So,
Yes. Is
like,
that something?
right. So the pandemic was this inflection point. So, um, sort of instead of the trends simmering along and allowing everybody to kind of like slowly over time get used to these trends, it just like boom went to a boil. And it became so much for leaders so quickly. You know what's super fascinating though? We did a survey of over a couple hundred leaders for our book, and we were looking at a variety of things, including emotional burden and perceived stress and burnout in the leader population. And it's actually higher now than it was at the height of the pandemic. And
Really?
yes, and I think what that strongly suggests is the cumulative effect of leading in this environment without being equipped um, with some of the skills for handling the emotional complexities and then recovering from a role that is demanding in a new way.
How about that? Well, thank you for sharing that startling statistic with us that does give us a lot of insight and amplifies the reason that the insights in your book are so important for us to keep in mind and follow. Well, what I'd like to do now is pause for a moment and acknowledge the sponsor of the Keep Leading podcast. If a single employee's indecision can cost an organization $10,000 to $1 million, imagine the potential financial impact when more individuals are added to this indecision equation. It can spiral out of control quickly. What's the solution? Decision X is a bespoke let me try that again and use the right, there we go, the right slide. Decision X is a bespoke, on-demand service designed to help your leaders overcome indecision and move forward with their work. Visit Papillon MDC and discover how you can help your team get unstuck, shift perspective, and advance today. I want to make sure that that's on the screen for those who are watching this live. For those who will hear the podcast later, it's papillonmdc.ca. My wonderful friends there in Canada. And want to remind you that the Keep Leading podcast is a part of C-Suite Radio. Together, we're turning up the volume on business. Visit csuiteradio.com to access the Keep Leading podcast or wherever you get your podcasts. All right. So I want to switch back to our conversation here. I am talking to the amazing Dina Smith. She is an executive coach, author, keynote speaker, and she writes for HBR, Fast Company, and Forbes. And we're discussing her book, Emotionally Charged: How to Lead in the New World of Work. One of the items that you help leaders with in your book, Dina, that I would like for you to explain to us is this concept of being triggered. How can we lead in the new world of work when we are triggered as a leader?
Yeah. Well, let's just say we all get triggered, right? We get triggered at work. There are people, there are events, there are environments that are personally triggering, right? And oftentimes the typical reaction is either to sort of shut down and lock up how you're actually feeling and paint on a smile, or or you react a bit quickly and possibly say or do something you regret. And ultimately, both these reactions are not that helpful. So then the question becomes, in the face of a trigger, like, how do you maintain your composure without suppressing or ignoring your emotions? And so one of the frameworks that we offer in the book deals with specifically this. And the framework is called BRAVE. And it stands for sort of proven, quick ways to deactivate yourself in the face of a trigger. And these are ways to regulate your emotions and maintain your composure sort of healthfully in ways that are beneficial for your performance. So I'll walk you through it really quick. So B is for breathe. Sounds basic, sounds simple, right? But in the face of a trigger, what typically happens is our breath gets really short. That spikes our heart rate. And so what you want to do is just take a few deep breaths, lengthening your exhale, right? This helps move you more into your parasympathetic nervous system from your fight or flight system. R is for refocus. Ground in the sensations in your body or what's happening in the room. The idea is to get your mind off of the trigger and onto something else. Again, this is proven to help ground you. A is for acceptance. Too often, what we do when we feel something that we feel like we shouldn't feel, like, I'm so mad, I'm mad again, right? We are just escalating our emotions. So acceptance is a scientifically proven strategy. And it's so simple. It's just accepting how you feel as normal and natural given the circumstances. So accept your emotions. V is for verbalize, not necessarily out loud, but find a couple labels for how you're feeling, because this helps shift you out of your limbic system into your prefrontal cortex. So breathing, refocusing, accepting your emotions, and finding a couple labels through verbalizing your feelings are 4 ways that you can sort of quickly downregulate. And they're simple, and that's the point. You can literally run through these in 30 seconds or less. So let's just say we've got a situation where you've been blindsided by somebody in a meeting, or your manager takes credit for your work, or there's some triggering situation, and you just feel that like clench of your body or the rush of
When you're getting
blood
all
to your
tense.
face. Yeah, like we all feel it in different places, right? But like we all know, like when all of a sudden we've gone from like 0 to 60, right? When you feel that, you know, ideally, like run through these things. But if not, like one is better than none. So take a couple deep breaths. I like to just like feel the my what are they like my fingerprint? Like have you ever tried
Mhm.
that? Like you can actually feel your fingerprint, or look out the window, whatever it is, but get your mind off of it really quick and then say, um, of course, it makes sense that I'd be feeling like frustrated and exposed right now. Like, boom, in 30 seconds or less, you will have really shifted your internal physiology in a way that enables you to be sort of calm and carry on. E is for engage, right? Which is the idea that like move forward once you've had a chance to deactivate. So
All
that's a
right. Well, thank you
framework
for
for,
sharing
yeah,
that with us. That's something
absolutely.
for us to keep in mind, and it's easy to remember. And we have folks joining us from YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. On LinkedIn, Gary Bomzer wanted to amplify a point you made earlier that sometimes we might be in the same building, but still on virtual. And there are reasons for that, of course, but he is agreeing with you that it does a disservice to professionals to avoid human interaction.
Mhm.
So, Gary, thank you for weighing in and being part of our discussion. All right. Now, I would like for you to tell us, for folks who are listening to our conversation, Dina, and they've taken in all this information, the good insights you share with us, what's the main point you want them to walk away remembering?
Yeah, I think what I want leaders to understand is, emotions are not squishy. They are fundamentally information and data that you can use to advance your career, to improve your relationships, to increase your performance, and benefit your health. So, by all means, like start tuning into them more and working with this. It is only to your benefit to start attending to this other source of incredible intelligence, that you can use for your benefit and the benefit of your team. That would be one thing. The second would be emotion skills are learnable. Everything in our book is proven, it's practical. So, no matter where you are on the spectrum of feeling like, this is really scary stuff, like I have never been trained in emotions and how to deal with them, to maybe you've got a lot of confidence in this area, we can all learn more. And so just know, have a growth mindset about this. No matter where you are, you can advance yourself. Um, and
And
the
that is
last
very
thing,
important.
yeah, yeah, and the last thing, real quick, that I'd want leaders to understand is there's something called the recovery paradox. And that is the fact that the people who need the break the most are the least likely to take it. So when you find yourself pushing through because like the mountain of work just never subsides, when you're pushing through lunch, when you're working in the evenings, when you're putting in a bunch of hours on the weekend, you're probably stuck in a stress spiral. And this overtime only degrades your performance and leads to burnout. So we didn't get to talk about it, but I am such a huge proponent of leaders really taking care of themselves, because it benefits not just them, but everybody else in the workplace.
Outstanding. Thank you, Dina. And want to acknowledge Gary. Appreciate the comment earlier. So thank you, Gary. We appreciate you listening, watching, and being part of our live discussion. Well, Dina, I always ask on the Keep Leading podcast, what is the quote that you use to help you keep leading?
Um, I specifically love this quote from John Kabat-Zinn, and it's, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf." I think it's just such an empowered way to think about how we can all rise to the challenges, which will just keep coming.
You can't stop the waves, but you can always learn how to surf. I like that. Dina, thank you so much for being a great guest today. We want to remind everybody to go out and get a copy of your book, Emotionally Charged: How to Lead in the New World of Work. We'll encourage people to go out and also to visit your website, dinadsmith.com, for those who are not seeing this on the screen, who will hear it on the podcast later. Uh, Stay connected with her, get with her on social media, and learn more about her incredible body of work. Thank you again for being a great guest, Dina.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for listening. That concludes this episode, everyone. I'm Eddie Turner, the Leadership Accelerator, reminding you that leadership is not about our title or our position. Leadership is action. Leadership is an activity. It's not the case of once a leader, always a leader. We must be a leader at our core and allow it to emanate in all that we do. So, whatever you're doing, always keep leading.